Welcome to this special session of the Platform Thinking MOOC. Today we've got a guest with us. We got Matteo Sarzana, General Manager of Deliveroo Italy. Welcome, Matteo.
Thank you for having me today.
So, I would like to start with a very simple question. Who are you?
Who am I? My name is Matteo. I am the one who actually started Deliveroo in Italy back in 2015. We have just celebrated our 6th birthday. Before that, my life was completely different. I was working in an advertising agency at first for the first 5 years of my career. Then I got the opportunity of starting a digital agency here in Italy back in 2008. The name was VML, and I actually have been the general manager for that agency until 2014. After that, I've joined an Italian startup named Zuppa. I've been there for a year, and then I got this exciting opportunity, having met with a couple of people who introduced me to Deliveroo. I knew nothing about Deliveroo at that time. I didn't know what they were doing. I wouldn't have bet a single euro that this company would have had this great success. But eventually I decided to join. I decided it was the right opportunity for me, and I signed my contract in July 2015. We got to London in September 1st. We met with the team, and a month and a half later, we were delivering orders here in Milan.
And can you tell us more about the history of Deliveroo? So how it all started?
Well, I wasn't the one who started it. Our founder, William Shu, started it. Will has actually a great story because he was born in the US, but his parents are Taiwanese. He actually had a great career in a completely different field. He was vice president for an investment bank in New York. Eventually, he was promoted and he joined the branch in London. He got to London and all of a sudden he discovered that actually none of the restaurants that he loved were delivering food, which was a huge problem for him because he was working like his ass off, literally. He was working more than 100 hours per week. And he started wondering why restaurants in London were not delivering food. I mean, he was used to New York where everything is open 24/7, you can get whatever you want anytime. And he started to look into this industry, and he discovered a very simple truth. And the truth was that restaurants are very good at doing food. What? Wow, what a discovery. But then they are not at all good at doing logistics, customer service, and marketing. So he was there in his office and he was willing to get food. So the person said, well, if no one is doing that, I'm going to do that. So he dropped his job. Again, he was vice president of investment, so he was not doing any internship. He started an MBA at Wharton. And a year after, with his old friend from Connecticut, he actually started delivering in London. And the idea was very simple. He said, well, if no one is delivering food from those restaurants, I'm going to build a platform who's going to deliver food from them. The idea was extremely simple, but groundbreaking at that time. The best part of it, though, is that the first restaurant who actually believed in the idea was an Italian restaurant, Rosso Pomodoro in Chelsea. And the first rider, of course, was Will. So he started the business, he started looking at the business model. He understood 3 things. The first one was that it was actually generating a lot of additional revenues for restaurants because the business model is based on the fact that the restaurants only pays Deliveroo when it gets an order, and the money that the restaurant pays is a commission based on the amount of money that the customer is ordering. The second one was that there are a lot of people who are looking for a very free way of working, which are the riders, which can join the platform anytime. They can reject orders. They can start and finish any time of the day they want. And the third one was that there were actually millions of people willing to order food. And the main difference compared to the previous platforms that were operating in the area was that the restaurants that we are delivering food from are very good restaurants. And more than that, those are restaurants that people know and love already. So the moment we started putting like the big brands on the platform, like Rosso Pomodoro, Pizza Express, I'm talking about London, Nando's, Chipotle, people started ordering because they trusted the fact that if those restaurants were willing to deliver food through the platform, clients could actually trust the platform themselves. The business started in 2012, at the end of 2012. in London. 2013, again in London. They opened another city, I guess it was Brighton. Then they started getting very good traction and attention from VC funds. At the beginning, everything was started with money coming from family and fools, family and friends, and it depends on the way you look at it. 2015 has been the year in which Deliveroo really stepped up the game. We opened 12 countries at that time, and the first like big VC funds like Accel started investing money in Deliveroo. We started with 25 million and 75. And that's when I joined. So the idea, I mean, we've all been brought to the company to basically start the company in the other countries. And we started in Milan, in Italy. We are now in more than 600 cities. We cover 50% of the population. If I look at the day we started and the conversation that I had with Will, I mean, the interview I had with Will, when I decided to join, he asked me, in how many cities do you want to be in Italy? I was like, well, maybe like 6, 7. But then we started seeing how much people love food in Italy, and how much people were trusting the platform to deliver food and deliver, if not exactly the same experience that you have in a restaurant, at least the same food experience that you can have in a restaurant.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the situation of food and restaurants in Italy and in England could be very different. So when you say that these famous, restaurant chains actually helped you in building a trust into the platform, is it similar in Italy? So do you expect to have these chains so popular as they are in England, or it is more a local kind of food and restaurants?
So you're right. I mean, the restaurant industry is completely different. In the UK, I would say more than 80% of the restaurants that we have on the platform are part of a bigger chain. In Italy is exactly the opposite. But the dynamic is actually exactly the same, because our business is not only local, not only hyper-local, it's something even more than hyper-local. So if you look at the business from a consumer perspective, what you're interested in is that restaurant in your street that you know. And you don't care whether that restaurant is part of a chain or not. You want to have that restaurant on your platform. Consider that the average order distance between the customer and the restaurant is less than 1 kilometer. So if you look at it from that perspective, what really matters is that you have the restaurants that people love. In Italy, most of them are the local gems. In the UK, they may be chains, but then if you don't have either the local gems or the big brand name, the business is not going to work. So you have to have that combination. In Italy, what is challenging is that in order to build the right supply with the right number of restaurants on the platform, it takes more time, because when you open a new city, you don't have all of a sudden like the 25 brand names that you find in every city. You may have like 5 or 6, but then you have to build all the others by going there, talking to people, talking to the restaurant, talking to the consumers, understand which are the relevant restaurants in that area that you are opening that are going to make the platform interesting for consumers. So it's different from an overall food and beverage industry, but the customer and consumer dynamics are exactly the same.
So that's interesting. And, somehow you brought a big brand in Italy, so you kind of built the platform here in Italy. Can you please go back to those days and tell us how was it? So how was to build a platform in a different country in a moment in which, platforms were everywhere, but not as we know them today?
Yeah, it was quite challenging. I will always remember the first time I spoke about objectives and KPI for the quarters. So we defined what the objectives were. And then I asked, so great, we need to get there, but how much money are we going to be able to spend in order to get there? And the answer was, so there's no budget, which doesn't mean that you have no money. It means that if you reach your objectives and you spend too much, you're going to be fired. If you don't reach your objectives and you spend like a small amount of money, you're going to be fired. You're only going to keep your job if you reach the objective by spending the right amount of funds. Like, okay, fine, we need to get there. How do we get there? Luckily, we have always looked at Deliveroo as a global brand, but a local business. Going back to the question about the restaurants, that's true also for a brand which was not only launched only in one city, but at the beginning we were only operating in a small area inside Milan. So we were to be extremely local in delivering the message. The good news at that time was that in Milan there were at least 15 competitors doing or claiming they were doing exactly the same, or at least they were delivering food. So when we launched the business, we said, well, we need to make extremely clear what our point of difference is going to be. And our launch campaign was super simple. It was knock, knock, like knocking on doors. The restaurants you love delivered in 32 minutes, which at that time was a groundbreaking message because no one was actually promising to customers that the food would have gotten to the door in an exact amount of time. That was one. Two, we had the ability to track the rider, which was a first for the industry. And third of all, we had like the big brand names that we were starting with. So the combination of these three factors created a unique selling proposition for the consumers. And I will always remember that the very first feedbacks that the first 1,000 feedbacks that we got from customers were, I have never ordered, I tried you because I wanted to blame you that you were doing false advertising, but actually you delivered it in less than 32 minutes, which was key at that time. So service 6 years ago was key. Things have changed over time, of course, because many more other competitors enter the market, all claiming or promising exactly the same delivery time, the same restaurants. So that's where we moved from a USP based on actual facts to a much more brand love proposition. That's why we started sponsoring the Italian football team. That was the best bet ever, considering that we have won the European Championship. We started working together with movie production houses. There is a movie with Frank Matano, which is going to be in theaters in a couple of weeks. And the story is about the delivery rider. Then artists like pop artists started using the Deliveroo brand name in their songs. So we are still, of course, trying to build a pop brand, which means to me that Deliveroo has to be a brand that people use when they think and they talk about food delivery, because it's so common and so familiar and so many people use it that it would make no sense to use another verb to talk about food delivery. Still, we are far away from that. I mean, food delivery has been in the spotlight for a very long time, and everyone thinks that everyone uses food delivery. But penetration across Italy is still extremely low. What we know is that the biggest challenge that we have to go against is to make people try the service once. Once they do that, most of the time they are hooked to the service, but there is still a barrier about trusting an online platform, no matter if it's Deliveroo or anyone else, trusting someone as delivering food, and also, let's say, an ethical bias that we Italians have, which is about not cooking food for the people that you love. Whilst if you think about it from a different perspective, if you don't have to cook, because none of us is going to be a Michelin star chef anytime in the future, maybe that's time that you can actually dedicate to the people that you love in a much better way than by cooking food, becoming crazy because you forgot that item that you need to cook the grandma recipe. And but those are the three main elements.
So you're very clear in telling us what is the value proposition for the final customer. But so I was wondering, in order to have this business running, you also need to have restaurants on the other side. And I can imagine that today it must be quite easy to convince a restaurant to jump on a platform. But I'm curious. So, what did you do at the beginning? Did you promise something? So, was any kind of particular service you were providing?
No, well, at the beginning it was actually much harder because even though we were showing restaurants by using like the business cases from the UK or from France, which had already launched, we were actually demonstrating that we are bringing additional revenues and so actual more money to the restaurants. Restaurants were skeptical that we would have been able to actually deliver food with the same quality that people were enjoying inside. So it took some time to start with the most loved and most important brands. But as soon as those brands started, they have not been able to drive more customers to the platform, but also more restaurants. Because what started was, well, if that restaurant that I believe is serving good food is actually on delivery, then I may join as well. But that's true, you know what? It's true also for riders. When we talk about customers in Deliveroo, we consider three different customers. So the people are actually ordering food, the restaurants, and the riders themselves. So what we offer them is actually very good pay for an unskilled job with a lot of freedom, but at a certain time with several securities that we give them, like insurance, additional benefits, bonuses, and stuff like that. So we do really look at this as a platform which is a three-sided marketplace where every single customer has to be happy. So for customers is enjoying food, for restaurants is additional revenues, and for riders is a well-paid job with enough freedom, but at the same time with guarantees that they are safe on the road.
We met in those years. It was 2015, and you were actually one of the first people we interviewed for the research we were doing on platforms back then. And I do remember coming there in your offices, feeling the thrill of launching a new city.
I'm not even sure in which office you have been, because we have been in 6 so far.
I think it was the second, if I remember correctly. You already moved, but you were moving somewhere else. And I do remember you were launching a new city. Each city was like a huge milestone. You said you were thinking about 6, you are in 600 or something like that. Can you tell us something more about those days? So what it was to launch a new city, what it meant, how you were managing that kind of process?
So you know what, to be very honest, it was very much test and learn. Because if you were to start a Deliveroo-like company today, it would be plenty of business cases. You could speak with a lot of people telling about the experience. Back 6 years ago, and to be extremely honest, that's also the reason why I've been hired without having like logistic experience or supply chain experience. No one knew how this business should have been run. To give you an example, when we opened the third city, we started with Milan, we opened Rome, and then we were looking at the third city and say, what are we going to open? Is it going to be Turin, Florence, Naples, Bologna? We decided to actually open Piacenza. It makes no sense if you look at it, but it was actually one of the best decisions we have ever taken, because my idea back then was, well, everyone is going to focus on these 6 or 9 or 12 big cities in Italy. But then if we really want to expand throughout the country, we need to prove that our model works in a small city as well. Then Piacenza is not the smallest in which we operate. We are now in much, much smaller cities, but we had to prove the business work. And that's how we learned the differences between operating in Piacenza compared to Milan, compared to Rome. And that's how we have built a model which is now able to open anything between 10 and 30 cities, 30 new cities every month. The good news was that this test and learn process was a daily one, because of using all the data that we are collecting, looking at all the metrics that are actually metrics that are built every day, every second. We could actually see and understand what was wrong. Give you another example, how far away should a restaurant deliver its food? I mean, of course, if you enlarge radii, you're gonna be able to serve more people and possibly more orders. But then which is the trade-off between serving more faraway people who are gonna more likely get their food cold, so you have to have more refunds. Is it that better, or you should have more strict radii, serve less people, delivering less orders, give the restaurant less revenues, but on the other side, you're losing less money in order to compensate people for the bad experience? So all these trade-offs have been used. I mean, we change them, not daily, but every couple of weeks. We try and find the best solution for using all the levers that we have locally in order to deliver the best experience. But I mean, you ask about the thrill or the excitement. It's really to see that everything you change really do have an effect on each of the customers that we serve. You see that immediately. You don't have to wait. It's not like spending 3 months creating a huge brand campaign and then you see the result, and then you have to wait another 6 months to test, to track the results. It's like we have launched a new restaurant last week. We have seen the uplift in volumes, new customers, a change in average order value, change in frequency, and that happens every single day, which is also stressing from another point of view, but that's a separate story.
But still staying in those early days, you kind of have someone for the single city. How were you able to bring on board restaurants there? How were things moving at the very beginning?
So we loved to call each other the 300s of Deliveroo, like the movie, because we were basically moving almost the full team in the new cities that we were gonna launch, operating from there, and then launching the city and going back to Milan. Actually, in each of the first 3 cities, so Milan, Rome, and Piacenza, we had an actual office in each of those cities. Then, as soon as I started looking at the business metrics and business cost of running like that, we started modeling a completely remote way of launching cities, which doesn't only involve signing restaurants, it's also hiring the riders, doing the marketing campaigns in order to start the city. And now we operate, we remote in a full remote way, which was super useful during the pandemic, because we could actually launch new cities without having people going anywhere.
So you said something like 600s. And when I was talking with you in those days, I was like, come on, I live outside Milan. I will never be so lucky to have the chance to use Deliveroo if I don't, move in the city. Well, now I can actually do it, even though I'm not living in a city. I'm actually living in a small town in the neighborhood of the city. And if I understood correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, that's possible thanks to Deliveroo Marketplace. So this evolution that you brought to the model. How is it now? How is it working? What is launching a new city today?
So it's both. I mean, to be clear, we have 2 models. One is Deliveroo Core, which is Deliveroo riders delivering food from restaurants, and then Marketplace is Deliveroo enabling customers to order from restaurants who have their own delivery. When we started expanding, we did the market research, and we saw that in those small cities, in those remote areas, most of the restaurants already had their own delivery service. And so we developed Marketplace with a unique mission, which is, right, if you have your own fleet, you can still use it. We are going to drive orders to your restaurant. But then if at any point you are running out of workforce in order to deliver the order, we can tap in with our own resources. Nonetheless, I mean, usually the average quality of those restaurants is average. And so in each city that we have launched, we may start with Marketplace, but then we do look for the local gems, and we try to find the best restaurants and have our own delivery, because the experience is so much better, because you cannot track someone else's rider. You cannot have the right inventory management live. So it's a completely different experience. So our model still relies a lot more on the experience that we're able to deliver with the core service.
Okay, thank you. So we are reaching the very end of this conversation together, and I would have a final question for you. which is, this course is titled Platform Thinking. We are trying to see how platforms are reshaping lives of people, how are reshaping businesses, and this is happening at a quite fast pace, changing from country to country, from industry to industry, and changing from year to year, quite importantly. It was 2015, it is 2021, it's completely different. What do you see in the future of platforms, not for Deliveroo, even broader, wherever you wish?
I think platform will play a much bigger role in the future. The question is a different one, which is how can platforms stay relevant for all the customers they serve? Because the more we evolve, the more technology evolves, the easier it's gonna be for a platform to be copied. Hence, the need for the platforms to keep innovating themselves and keep finding new ways to become relevant for the consumers. If you look at what we have done, we have changed we have not changed the fundamentals of our business model, but we have changed what we offer to each of the customers. For restaurants, for example, we started a while ago offering data sharing and data consultancy because we noticed that even though restaurants could already access data, they were not able to actually process them and transform these into new business metrics. For riders, we have changed the way we work with them as soon as we started understanding that the most important value for them was the freedom to work when they want. Hence, the idea of finding a way to pay for their services in a different way. For consumers, we started with only the big brand names, only the super cool restaurants. Now you can basically find every restaurant that you want because we understood that customers are the ultimate decision makers. So the guy who orders, let me give you an example in Milan, from Nobu and spends $100 for sushi is the same guy who may order a kebab at 2 a.m. Saturday night because he's craving that kind of food. So to sum up my answer to your question is platforms are still a big part of our lives. They will be even bigger in the future, but they have to find meaningful ways to stay in touch with their customers. And the important part of that is that customers is not only the guy ordering food, but it's the whole ecosystem which makes the platform survive. Because without restaurants, as you have said, and without riders, we would not be able to deliver food.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you for staying here with us and for sharing your experience in Deliveroo. Thank you, Matteo.
Bye.